Hello?
I can see you.
Oh.
In a brand new Lexus.
No, wait, are you guys are you with the car dealership? You guys keep calling me and won't leave me alone.
No, we're with a more reputable car dealership.
Oh, okay, well that's fine then. So a Lexus, huh?
No, a Lexus.
Right. Like the
it's
car.
It's a car.
Yeah, like the car. So, that sounds nice.
Your drapes.
What about them?
I got nothing. I was just trying to sell you a Lexus. And you just made it weird, and now I just want to hang up because I feel awkward.
I don't feel like you are that much more reputable than the other car dealership.
Now you're just trying to hurt me, and I don't appreciate that at all.
This podcast is about why horror scares us. What deep, dark, secret, scary cinema shines a light on. The discussions are frank and involve conversations about abuse, trauma, and mental health. There are also spoilers, so keep that in mind too. Now, sharpen your machetes and straight razors, because this is Cutting Deep into Horror.
Welcome back to Cutting Deep into Horror. I'm your host, Henrique Couto, here with my co-host, Rachael Redolfi. Rachael, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Even though you've had to watch the exploits of a woman terrorized by a telephone?
Well, considering my day job, answering telephones, it wasn't that, I mean,
most people have to answer phones in their job.
Yeah. No, it was, I had fun with the movie. I thought it was a good movie.
Well, tonight we're going to be talking about Someone's Watching Me from 1978. And this is a much lesser known horror film, but it is one of the earliest John Carpenter films, the man who went on to direct Halloween, They Live, In the Mouth of Madness, a ton of movies, Prince of Darkness. You could really just, keep rolling the more you mention them. But this was kind of considered for many years to be his lost movie because it was a made-for-TV movie. I believe it aired on NBC.
Ooh.
On November 29th, 1978. And it was a film that he made literally right before making Halloween. Halloween was in pre-production while he was directing Someone's Watching Me. And it's an interesting one. It really did kind of end up lost to time for a long time because a lot of those TV movies did. They didn't get a home video release immediately unless they had like a ton of accolades or big star names in them. And I mean bigger than John Carpenter, because John Carpenter is a star in the genre world, but otherwise not so much.
Yeah.
And so it kind of hung in obscurity for a very long time. And I believe it didn't hit home video in America until 2018.
Oh, wow.
It might when Scream Factory released the film on Blu-ray. I don't see any other record of a release. It might have had a DVD that they're forgetting about because there was, in the early 2010s, there was a little era for releasing made-for-TV movies on DVD.
Okay.
There was even a collection called the Made-for-TV Terrors Collection that I think there were 2 or 3 volumes of it. And it had a lot of really great ones. Made-for-TV horror movies are kind of a lost art form because now made-for-TV is pretty much in the realm of thrillers and Christmas movies.
Yeah.
That's what you get. You get thrillers and Christmas movies, both especially consumed on the Lifetime network, and on very rare occasions they're combined. Very rare. I think that once a year they do a Lifetime like Christmas movie that is a Lifetime style thriller. And they don't do super well because there really isn't a lot of crossover in that audience.
Yeah.
So, which, it makes sense. It makes sense to me anyway. I remember years ago I produced a film called A Raunchy Christmas Story thinking it would do so well because Christmas movies do so well, and it did not do very well because it's just not the audience that is waiting for a Christmas movie, not the large audience, unlike a family-friendly Christmas movie or a rom-com or something like that. But before all of that, which really only went to prominence in the early 2000s and onward, with a brief period where sci-fi original movies were a big deal.
I do remember that.
Well, I would hope. I mean, the Sharknado movies started there. Piranhaconda and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But the bread and butter was, became those Lifetime thriller movies and those Christmas movies. Well, back in the 60s and 70s, there was a lot of made-for-TV movies because, in part, licensing a major movie to show on TV was very expensive, and there were maybe 4 networks, NBC, ABC, CBS. I don't think Fox existed yet. I don't think they launched until the 80s.
Oh, wow.
And there might have been other ones I'm forgetting, but those were the key players.
Yeah.
And if they could afford to show a movie, it would not be brand new because it would have to have played theaters already.
Mm-hmm.
Home video was still in its infancy in the era I'm talking about. So people weren't even really renting movies yet. So you did go to television to see movies you missed in the theater or wanted to rewatch, but there was no exclusivity. There was nothing to really pull people in to feel like they have to watch. And that's where the made-for-TV movie comes in, because they would produce these movies for relatively the price of licensing a major movie to air on TV. I mean, like $1 million.
Okay.
Maybe a little more, maybe a little less.
Yeah.
And they'd make a movie whole cloth and air it. And they could not only be like, hey, here's a movie, but they could be like, this is the first time it's ever been seen anywhere, and you'll never see it anywhere but CBS or but ABC or but NBC. So that's really how that was kind of born.
Right.
Because the networks needed to compete with each other. And on top of that, there was this strange impetus for them to be very scary. And some of them were scarier than people realize. I mean, Trilogy of Terror is one of those films that's legendary now for how it terrorized an entire generation of people who watched it as kids. Yeah. And that was a Dan Curtis film. And Dan Curtis kind of became the king of horror made for TV movies. I mean, it got to the point where they would let him make anything he wanted. He could make a Frankenstein movie. He could make a Dracula movie. I mean, he literally did Frankenstein. He did Dracula. He did all kinds of stuff. People would show up in droves. And of course, most famously, Dark Shadows. He was behind that.
Okay.
So it kind of got to a point where he could like write his own ticket, because people had asked him why you stuck to TV movies. And he was like, because they just hand me money and I could go do it. Like, I didn't have to go around begging or pitching or anything. They just wanted the next Dan Curtis horror movie that would be on TV. So it's definitely a bygone era, but there were some movies, and a lot of them were either cheesy or super just thrillery. Like, they weren't like mortifyingly scary.
Yeah.
But every now and then you'd get something like Dark Night of the Scarecrow or Trilogy of Terror, like we mentioned. Or there was one, Are You in the House Alone? That one was like a thriller, but it was also very upsetting. It was about a young girl who gets sexually assaulted by a beloved football player at her high school. And they start terrorizing her because she's speaking out about it. They're trying to like stop her.
Ooh.
And so it was actually, in a lot of ways, it felt like an after school special, except that it had a lot of suspense and it was scary. But like, the resolution of the movie was just, she stood up to them anyway. And in the end, like, the police and her family and the faculty took her side. It's just that, they were trying to convince her that because he was so beloved as the star football player, that they wouldn't believe her.
Right.
That's what they were trying to scare her with. Also, that was one of the earliest Dennis Quaid roles. He played he played the rapist football player in that one. Oh. That one, I remember it very vividly for being pretty intense and unnerving. And that was on television. I mean, it was on at 8 o'clock. you know, and the idea was that you would put those challenging things in there with the hope being that the family afterward could talk about it or whatever.
Right.
About what they just saw.
Spark a conversation.
Well, and there were a lot of different versions. So this one that we're talking about tonight, I've always loved the made-for-TV horror era. Someone's watching me. This was later in that era, and I would say that it reached its peak by the time the 90s hit. It was pretty much done.
Okay.
So it probably reached its peak in the early 80s of the made-for-TV movie. You also had things like cable was happening.
Yeah.
And cable made-for-TV movies, because that's the other thing. You know, when you think made-for-TV movie now, you're thinking, most people think Lifetime, Hallmark, you know, those places, because they do that all the time. They show these made-for-TV movies, but those are cable channels. And a lot of them are, you know, they're pumping out, I don't even know, 20 of them a year. It could be more.
Yeah.
I know that one time they were debuting, like every weekday, they were debuting a new Christmas movie on, I think it was on Lifetime or Hallmark. So that's like 20 movies just there.
Yeah.
So, but back in the day when you had 3 or 4 networks, it was a big deal to get like maybe 5, 8 a year.
Yeah.
Maybe a little more, maybe a little less. It also depended on how understandings with movie studios and the television studios were. And the movie studios, they had kind of a vested interest in kind of being curmudgeonly about sharing their movie rights because, you know who produced Someone's Watching Me?
Who?
Warner Brothers. Because who are you going to go to get a movie made?
Yeah.
A movie studio.
Yeah.
Who created the need for you to make your own movies because you can't afford to license their movies.
Yeah.
And this was before most of the movie studios were owned by the same parent companies as most of the networks. You know, now that's a normal thing. Paramount owns CBS, stuff like that, but that was not always the case.
Yeah.
In various different eras. In some points it was illegal to do that. In other points it wasn't. It's a whole mess you could go into. But made for TV movies always will have a soft spot in my heart, especially those ones from the 70s and early 80s. The other thing that made for TV movies started doing later on that really helped kind of grab people and keep them watching was they would take a movie that was maybe a bit on the older side, 20 years old or so, which was very old. You know, if it was made in the 60s and now you're in the 80s, that's, or even the 70s to the 80s, it was because they're very old. If it was like 15 years old. And then they would make a sequel because they'd have enough money to get like a name actor or get to get the rights and stuff like that. So they'd be like, let's make a made for TV movie sequel to it because everybody's heard of it. Yeah. And now they can watch it for free. They just have to, jiggle their bunny ears. A really famous example of that would be Amityville 4, The Evil Escapes, which was the 4th official Amityville horror film. That was a made for TV movie with Patty Duke.
Okay.
And I mean, it's obvious when you watch it. It's very TV movie-ish. But another example would be When a Stranger Calls Back. They made a sequel to When a Stranger Calls, but I think that might have actually been a Showtime movie.
Oh,
that might have been later because I think that was in the 90s because they were still made for TV movies and horror movies. But the market moved more to the miniseries. That's why Stephen King kind of dominated all of these 2-night event, 3-night event miniseries things. And so,
and that's what I remember more is like the miniseries era. Obviously less horror, but that's kind of what I remember.
What were the miniseries you were watching?
I mean, of course, the one I can remember off the top of my head is Dinotopia, but that was like early 2000s.
Yeah, I've never heard of it.
Yeah, that was like toward the tail end of the miniseries era. So
yeah,
that's a different. Well, tangent.
And now there's no miniseries; they're only limited series.
Yeah.
Which is the exact same thing.
It's just,
it's the exact same thing. It is a set number of episodes of a thing. And if it gets way too successful, they'll throw money at it until they can bring it back like they did with Your Honor on Showtime. which when they said like they're doing a season 2, I was like, that was a limited series and everyone died. Like everybody that mattered died because it was completely self-contained. Like it was started and it ended. It was, they did some cop outs and some flashbacks and they made another season. It was watchable, but it wasn't excellent like that first one because it had a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yeah.
And that was it.
That's kind of like like that's what you need to make a story is a beginning, middle, and end.
I mean, in theory. So,
yeah.
But we're going to take a quick break. And when we get back, we'll dig a little bit further into Someone's Watching Me and the history around it right after this. So we're back talking about Someone's Watching Me from 1978, starring Lauren Hutton, David Birney, and Adrienne Barbeau. Adrienne Barbeau was, I don't know how famous she was at the time that this made-for-TV movie was made, but she became just incredibly famous, beloved, and she was considered like probably one of the earliest MILFs.
Okay.
Because by the time she was, well, I don't know. That's obviously like a weird, like it's a weird category because you could really be a mom once you're over, 14, biologically, you could be a mom very young. And she was playing like a super MILF on Drew Carey show. It was like The Joke. Oswald's mom was played by Adrienne Barbeau and everybody was just like, whoa, your mom's so hot. But like, she was in her 30s and 40s and people were obsessed with her back in the day too.
Mm-hmm.
So, but she was very well liked. She was in Grease. She was in the sitcom Maude for many years. And then she appeared in this film. And then she had a string of films, horror movies and kind of genre movies. Like The Fog in 1980, Escape from New York in 1981, Swamp Thing in 1982, Creepshow in 82 as well. And in 1979, wow, that was just a year later, she had married John Carpenter.
Oh, wow.
I didn't realize they got together so quickly.
Yeah.
Because I know that he was with Deborah Hill when they made Halloween. Man, they splitsvilled like as soon as that movie was over. Huh. I didn't know. I mean, I know they kept working together because Deborah Hill was on the credits of a few things. I guess they were never married anyway.
Okay.
But Adrienne Barbeau and John Carpenter met on, I would almost say guaranteed they met on this film. They got married in 79 and divorced in 1984.
Yeah.
So a pretty long Hollywood marriage.
Yeah.
And Barbeau that's what kind of catapulted her into all these genre movies. And these genre movies ended up being what people remembered her for the further, the more time went on, because those movies tend to have the fan conventions and stuff like that. And she still does appearances to this day. But one of my favorite stories, because I mean, you look at this, I mean, she worked for John Carpenter, then she did Creepshow with George Romero, and then Swamp Thing with Wes Craven.
Damn.
So, and that was all in a very short span, but apparently she wasn't super plugged in because I remember listening to an interview with her years and years ago. And she was talking about how she'd gotten a call to go in and read for Creepshow.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, I don't know if I want to do it or not. It's another horror movie, but like it could be fun. I don't know. Some of it shoots in Pittsburgh. I think I'd have to go to Pittsburgh. And Carpenter was just like, oh, no. That's George Romero's new movie. Like, you've got to work with George Romero. And she was like, who's George Romero? And he was like, the guy who made Night of the Living Dead. And she was like, I think I saw that, so like, he was literally like, no, he's one of the greats that is out there. So, yeah, Adrienne Barbeau, very, very interesting career. I don't know a ton about Lauren Hutton. I'm guessing she was probably a big name on television because that's usually where they cast made for TV movies back then.
Yeah.
You also need to remember that that television and feature films were extremely separate. There were very, very, very few actors and directors who could bounce between television and feature films. Usually the rule of thumb was once you're working in feature films, if you go to television, you're on your way out. Like you may never get back into films. Of course, there were a lot of exceptions, and as time went on, the exceptions gained a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But it was considered like a ghetto because television was where you went to make money.
Mm-hmm.
And film was where you went to make art, I guess, or make mistakes, I guess. I don't know. But no, because back in the day, like if you worked on syndicated television or just network television that would be syndicated, I mean, you did 20 some episodes a year,
mm-hmm.
constant work, constant cranking. There's always people writing it, always people directing it, always people acting in it for half the year. Just bam, 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 bam. And then if it comes back, you do it again and everybody gets a raise.
Yeah.
You know, that matters. So that was like where you went to make money because every time it aired, the advertisers paid money and then the production company got money and then they paid people.
Yeah.
And that was the entire system until really HBO was the beginning of the end of that because HBO, there's no commercials, people are paying. And now that's normal with Netflix and Paramount Plus and Hulu. And I mean, although some of them have ads, but it's still like, it's very different now. So TV shows, it's one of the reasons that TV shows are shorter, the length of the seasons is there's not as much money in having it be long.
Right.
I mean, there's no need that. And they want the production value to be higher. Cause that was the other thing in TV movies and TV shows. I mean, they didn't really care that much about production value.
Yeah.
I mean, they wanted them to look good, but they cared much more that you shot the episode in the time allotted. That was like your entire job when you directed TV was make your day. Because if you don't, you're going to be in trouble. You'll get fired because then they'll just have the head writer who directs 3 episodes a season anyway come in and take over. So it was a very, very different world. And for John Carpenter, well, real quick, let's see what Lauren Hutton was known for. She was in the sports drama Paper Lion in 1968. American Gigolo and The Gambler, although the American Gigolo was after this. Oh, and here we go. And then she also later appeared in Falcon Crest, which was one of the most popular TV shows of the 80s. So she was definitely like a fixture. She was a woman you would recognize as being in movies and television.
Okay.
Starring in it. So, but John Carpenter, I mean, his career started, I mean, and he is one of those legend guys. His career started with a little film called Assault on Precinct 13. And it's a good one. Well, I mean, technically it started with Dark Star, A Spaced Out Odyssey, but which is a lot of fun, but it was originally a college short film that they then got some money put in to make it into a feature. It's a wacky low budget movie. It's really fun. I just don't entirely consider it his first feature because it wasn't really planned out that way. It just kind of became that. But it also it was written and starring Dan O'Bannon, the writer of Alien.
Oh, cool.
He went on to write Alien and then went on to write and direct Return of the Living Dead and several other things. But then, so in 76, he does Assault on Precinct 13 and it was a modest hit. It's a horror film about, people basically, trying to invade a precinct, an old police precinct to get to somebody. Mm-hmm. It's a siege movie and it left a big impact on people. They liked it a lot. So he got the gig doing Someone's Watching Me and immediately after started on Halloween, which is when he became the John Carpenter everybody knows and loves.
Yeah.
So a lot of history lessons there, but I think it's really interesting because this movie, which was very seldom seen, in my opinion, has a lot of flavor that went to Halloween.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and we'll talk about that a little bit more right after this break. So, as I was saying, John Carpenter's career really launches with Halloween, but literally he wrapped Someone's Watching Me and 2 weeks later, he was on the set directing Halloween.
Yeah.
It's actually one of the reasons when you watch all the supplemental material for Halloween, and there's plenty of it, you hear all these wild stories about like building props, making the Michael Myers mask, all these stories. And John Carpenter's not a part of a ton of them. He's really not a part of any of the stories that aren't the filming of the movie and the editing of the movie. It's because he was off making a paycheck doing Someone's Watching Me.
Yeah.
Which in a lot of ways allowed him to make Halloween because he didn't have to take a paycheck, or at least not much of one. But I think that it's really worth looking at, if just for that curiosity. But I also think it's a solid, taut, and very good thriller. I mean,
I agree.
It works very, very well. And Carpenter said that the experience helped him immensely on Halloween because it was his first time working with a union crew who were very experienced. It's how he got into the Directors Guild. And that he had a really great time with it. They shot for, I think it was 18 days.
Okay.
Yeah, it was shot in 18 days. And Carpenter claimed that he was shocked at how little input the studio had on him. He expected them to be breathing down his neck all the time because it was a TV movie.
Yeah.
And he said that they let him do a lot of what he wanted.
That's always nice.
Well, John Carpenter's never been, aside from a few different, like kind of oddball movies that he's done, he's never been like a big bloody mess guy or a big gory, violent, disgusting kind of, he's never really been that into that stuff. So I don't see what they would really want to rein him in on anyway. I mean, he was making a taut thriller about a woman living alone and being terrorized. So, which was supposedly based on a true story.
Really?
We'll get to that in just a second. So, but yeah, at the time he felt really great about it. And then he claimed that, that when he went into Halloween, he had all these new ideas about how to do everything because he had just worked with this really skilled and intense crew.
That's awesome.
So apparently the studio, so the film is, if you haven't picked up the context clues or watched it on Tubi for free before we talked about it, the film is about a young woman who's moved into a high-rise apartment and starts getting terrorized by phone calls and someone stalking her. John Carpenter was hired all the way back in 1976, like right on the heels of his first film, to write a feature script based on a true story about a woman in Chicago who was being stalked. He spent 3 months writing it, handed it in. 8 months later, Warner Brothers contacted him saying they wanted him to make it as a TV movie and offered him the opportunity to direct. So that was how that all came about.
Oh, that's cool.
So one thing I've always liked about Carpenter is that he makes not very much look very fancy. I feel like he makes less is more really feel like more. He's not afraid to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that plays super well on a made-for-TV movie, especially when a good third of the film is a woman by herself in an apartment. Maybe a third, maybe a fourth. I mean, it's not that encapsulated. She goes places, makes friends, has jobs, goes to restaurants. There's production value there for sure.
Yeah, but it still feels very, very claustrophobic, though.
Oh, yeah. Well, and she's only, aside from like a few little moments where she's out and about, she's only terrorized at home. In fact, when we get to a little bit later, like the couple of times where she's terrorized not in her house turn out to be false flags. They turn out to not be the stalker at all. The stalker really only comes for her when she's in her own home, which is a lot scarier.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Well, and this harkens to a simpler time when the telephone was damn near anonymous still. There were ways to find out who had called you, but not in an immediate fashion. I mean, you would have to be harassed for a while to go to the trouble of calling the police and calling the telephone company and having them, pull all this together to try and figure out who's calling you. That was just, you wouldn't do it unless it was really, really serious. And even then they might not be able to help you with that. So, and the fact that during the era of landlines, you could just sit in your house and anybody could be on your phone, sitting right next to you in your home with your locked doors. The phone could ring and a person that you don't know at all. You have no idea if they're, insane, friendly, evil. You don't know anything about them and they can just call you.
Yeah.
And start talking to you. That's scary. I mean, it is. And it's a very, for that era, like that modern era, a very modern kind of fear.
Yeah.
To have the phone ring and it be somebody watching you or stalking you or trying to mess with you. I mean, that's pretty much, I mean, When a Stranger Calls, which was just a few years earlier, maybe 74, 72, with Carol Kane, which I love that movie. I think that movie's really good and really scary. And they literally just lifted the trope that the calls coming from inside the house. They literally used that in the movie, which helped permanently affix that to the zeitgeist forever because it was then in a major movie. But that was a good example too. I always love the scene when they're trying to track the call in that movie because the guy from the phone company is literally running through a giant wall of phones, moving wires, trying to figure out where that phone call is coming from. And you're like, oh man, I can't even imagine how. You ever just look at like technology stuff and wonder how did they even do it when it was that hard?
Oh God, yeah.
Like how did they even think like, let's just give everybody a phone number when it's this friggin' hard to do phones?
Right.
Like, and it wasn't, I mean, it cost money, but it wasn't prohibitively expensive. That still blows my mind. Like how, having a phone line in your house wasn't like $300 or $400. I'll never understand. But yeah, so with this film, we're getting kind of that element. We're also getting being kind of post women's lib. Mm-hmm. The main character is a single woman who's decided to move from New York to Los Angeles to find her own fortunes and maybe get away from a man. But also I'm pretty certain, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not getting away from a man who was particularly abusive. It was like he was married or something or cheated on her. They just don't make it sound dire.
Yeah, I definitely know that he wasn't abusive, but it was more she was like, I just don't like him anymore. Like there was something going on, but it wasn't huge.
Yeah, and they might have worked, and they worked together. That was the big thing. They worked together, so she had to get out of that job to get away from him.
That's right.
So you have, I mean, a very kind of modern thing going in the late 70s, with this female-led movie about a woman moving to the city on her own, and there's plenty of room for anxiety there.
Oh, yeah.
Whether the anxiety is from the perspective of the woman or from the perspective of men watching this woman and kind of imagining their sister, daughter, wife, mother in the scenario. Mm-hmm. It kind of works on both of those planes.
Yeah. No, well, I felt like the great thing about Lee was how relatable she was because she was such a deep character. And the movie does a great job, like from the get-go, establishing so much about her because, we learn that she is a professional woman and that she works on the news and TV and
she's a television director.
She's a television director. And we kind of immediately, she starts joking around that her mom that wants her to settle down, but she's just like not ready for that life, not about that life.
No, she jokes that her mom wants to settle down.
Her mom wants to settle down.
Yeah, she makes like all these weird jokes.
And I love that about her.
I think it's one of the best parts of her character is that like whenever people ask her a question, she makes a joke. And my favorite thing is that the jokes almost never land.
Yeah.
Because there was that part where the doorman knocks on her door to deliver a note from the front desk. And he's like, sorry to interrupt you, your shower, or sorry to interrupt you. And she's in like a towel and stuff. And she says, it's okay. I was getting too clean anyway. And
yeah.
He doesn't laugh.
He just looks at her like,
he just walks away. I love that. So,
yeah.
But we'll take a quick break and we'll start talking about the further details of Someone's Watching Me right after this. I want to mention real quick, I double checked and the film was released on DVD in 2007. So it was only basically impossible to find in America for like 80, 90, for like just under 30 years.
Oh, okay.
Or, wait, no, 2007. Yeah, like 29 years.
Oh, so no time at all.
No time at all. And it never had a VHS release in the United States at all.
That's kind of surprising, though, with the VHS boom.
Yeah, made-for-TV movies, it was kind of weird. In the very early days of VHS, you had a lot of made-for-TV movies come out on tape because studios were willing to hand those over because they didn't really see them as having much value left.
Okay.
So they didn't see made-for-TV movies as completely valueless or, like pointless to preserve because they would sell them in foreign markets.
Okay.
And they would sell them often in foreign markets as first-run movies. So made-for-TV movie in America could play theaters in Germany, Japan, wherever.
That
in fact,
sense.
In Europe, they had the movie on VHS in the mid-'80s. It had been on tape. So it was kind of never lost out there. But here, there was a time period where people were wanting to track down a copy, and the only way you could get one before 2007 was to find a bootleg from some other, release from another nation.
Other country.
So that's the way it kind of goes. If it had been a TV movie from, 1966, there might have been a real shot it would have been on VHS from the period of time where nobody wanted to license anything worth anything to be on videotape.
Okay, yeah.
Like Magnetic Video, the first video distribution company, literally they sent out this letter to all the film studios saying that videotape is the future and, everybody's going to be watching movies in their homes on videotape and they should all like get in now. And they pretty much all laughed, just went like, right. Except 20th Century Fox. 20th Century Fox was like, we'll try. Like, what do we got to lose? So they licensed some of their older titles. I forget what, this would have been like the late 70s or early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
They licensed a bunch of old titles that didn't really have a ton of oomph anymore because they were busy with other theatrical things and television licensing. But some of those films were like Star Wars and things like that. And when the boom occurred and 20th Century Fox wanted to cash in with their big movies on VHS, they had to write a contract and buy out Magnetic Video because Magnetic Video had the rights for like 20 years to all of these movies on VHS, like Star Wars and stuff. So they had to come to them and be like, we'll pay you a shitload of money if you'll please just give us our rights back. So it was the Wild West. Nobody knew what was really going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that's important to remember. I hate revisionist history. I mean, everybody does, but I really do because revisionist history kills all the fascinating nuances. Like, I've heard this told a million times about when Blockbuster went out of business.
Mm-hmm.
People always talk about how, at one point Netflix came to Blockbuster and said, like, we would be willing to sell to you for $60 million because, like, we're the future of everything. And, And Blockbuster went, no, are you kidding me? Like, we're Blockbuster. That wasn't how it went at all. Like, at all. And first of all, it doesn't make any sense. The reason Netflix was like, we'll sell ourselves for $60 million was that they had no incoming cash flow. They were struggling to survive,
mm-hmm.
and they wanted Blockbuster to buy them in part, to get them out of financial strain, but also because Blockbuster had the infrastructure to do video returns, so that what they really wanted was for the Netflix, this was when it was still discs in the mail,
right?
For people to be able to return the discs to stores to speed up the ability to distribute the movies.
Okay.
They thought that would save Netflix.
Okay, yeah.
But Blockbuster was already experimenting with their own by mail rental that had that ability, and it wasn't going that well, so they weren't that interested. But on top of that, Blockbuster was being they were like completely overstrained debt-wise. Or Blockbuster was, because Blockbuster had been spun off from Viacom. And when they were spun off from Viacom, they were given an immense amount of Viacom's debt.
Ooh.
So they were in an insane amount of debt. If they hadn't taken the lion's share of Viacom debt, they would probably still be here.
Ooh.
In some form, because they would have been able to take more risks without going away. But they basically, when they were fully on their own in the early 2000s, it was like, okay, if we make 4 missteps, we're dead. Like we can't have more than a couple of years of loss, which is not a lot when you're talking about $1 billion company.
Yeah.
They have whole years that are nothing but losses trying to build something new.
Yeah.
So that's just one example that like always drives me crazy. It's like, yeah, Netflix didn't walk in there like cocks of the walk because they friggin' they needed money. That's when you sell something, it's not because you know that it's so incredibly valued that, you know, you can get a ton of money for it. 60 million wouldn't even be that much. I mean, if it is the future.
Right.
As you know it was, they were looking to sell for a minute and Blockbuster was the obvious first person to go to. Blockbuster was not financially solvent, so they decided not to risk even more by buying another brand. And the other thing is I think he was the CEO or the president or the chairman of Blockbuster when he was interviewed about the whole thing, because he was there when they pitched for Blockbuster to buy them.
Uh-huh.
And he said, he was like, honestly, if we had leveraged ourselves to buy it, we might have knocked them out of business because we had so much debt and we were struggling so much. If we had taken another $60 million in debt out, we might not have been able to see the fruits of Netflix's labor because we probably wouldn't have been able to go on long enough.
Okay.
Because nobody came to bail Blockbuster out.
Yeah.
So who would come to bail Netflix out? They had to go to regular investors and stuff. Mm-hmm. That is quite the digression, but I stand by it because in show business, it's a lot of this, like everybody's so smart, except when it matters. When it matters, nobody makes a goddamn penny. Nobody does anything well. But after the fact, everybody knows exactly which way the wind was going to blow forever. It drives me crazy.
Hindsight is 20/20.
You better believe it. That's why people should wear their glasses on their asses.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But we're going to take a quick break and we'll talk a little bit more about our main character moving into her apartment. Who knows? We'll talk about the movie right after this. So we meet our main character, Lee Michaels, as we mentioned, played by Lauren Hutton, who, by the way, I think she plays the kind of awkward but not at all shy Lee very well.
Oh, yeah.
I think she really relished doing such an oddball character who was making, you know, strange jokes to everybody, but she also has like a really solid amount of vulnerability.
Yeah.
That I think comes across really well.
Yeah.
We find out that she's moved to Los Angeles because her old job had given her a really big bonus. She was directing television in New York. And so they'd given her a fat bonus, but of course she left the job. And one of my favorite parts is after she basically shows up at a station. I don't think they mentioned the name of the station, but she shows up to the station and they literally just throw her into the fire. She's talking to the guy. He's like, go in here and start directing. And she's like, what? And he's like, they're live in 4 minutes.
She's like, I don't even know your camera crew. I don't know what your beats are.
He's like, you should know this stuff. So, and the explanation he gives is that they're the smallest major station in one of the biggest markets in America. So he's like, there's not a lot of time for anything other than getting it done because we're the smallest station, but we're the smallest station in all of the competitors. So we're struggling all the time. So she's basically like a temp. She's working there as her interview. And because when it's done, he's like, great, we'll have you come back tomorrow. You know, you want to do some more stuff. But in doing that, she meets Sophie, played by Adrienne Barbeau. And Sophie is a technical director. And for those who do not know, so in television directing, especially back then, the television director was the person who literally called the shots. They sit there, they look at the wall full of video feeds of the cameras and whatever else there is, whether it's B-roll on a tape or whatever. And you say what is supposed to be happening. You're basically conducting. You're controlling the flow of everything. And then the people around you are doing what you're saying. So you'd have a board op who controls the sound, you know, so that you could, you know, because you might say like, bring up the microphone on number 4. whatever it is. So you have a board op, you have a Chiron operator is what they used to call them. That was the person who handled text that went on the screen. And it was very complicated until the Amiga 500 or whatever became the way they did that. Because before that, sometimes they would actually have to type things on paper and then point them in front of a camera really fast. I mean, it could be really hard. It could be really hard, or they'd have like a device that was almost like a light bright, but for video. It was very, very weird. Because if you want, so people would be stenciling things in a hurry. That went away. I mean, I'm sure by this time they weren't doing that. They were probably using computers, but when the video toaster came out in the late 80s and early 90s, it changed everything because it was basically a computer that could do that.
Yeah.
And then you have the technical director, which is Sophie. Mm-hmm. And the technical director does all of the camera related stuff the director says.
Right.
And the way that usually goes across, and I know this down to my DNA because this is how I started in entertainment, was working in live television. So it is literally like camera one. And when you say camera one, that means that the technical director is now looking at camera one, previewing it, and camera one has now heard their name and now knows that they're being watched. Ergo, they can't like suddenly decide like, I'll try and get a shot like this, or I'm going to pan over here. I'm going to fix my focus. Is my focus good? The second you hear camera one, you're like, oh, whatever you were about to do, don't do it because you might be live any second.
Okay.
So you hear camera one, taking camera one, you're live. That is literally what almost all of the job is. Camera one, taking camera one's live. Camera two, taking two live. That's literally it. So when you say camera one, they're looking at it. And then you say taking camera one, that's the technical director then taking it.
Yeah.
And taking would be to cut. You could also say like fade to camera two, fade to camera three, fade to camera four. And it would get more complicated from there. If there was B-roll, it'd be like, prepare deck one with the B-roll or whatever. It could get more complicated depending, but that was what you do. Mm-hmm. And that's what she does in the movie. She calls all the shots and everybody's, rushing through it because live TV is a hell of a thing. Even when we were doing it on community access television, it was still like a wild rush because your mistakes are forever.
Yeah.
So they succeed in doing their show, and Sophie lights up a cigarette and starts talking with Lee, and then they're chatting in Sophie's little office afterward. And I love this exchange because you realize almost immediately they're going to become friends.
Yes.
Because she asks her like, so, what brings you to Los Angeles? She's like, oh, well, I used the money from my old job. They gave me a really fat bonus. So I used that to move out here and kind of figure things out. And she's like, if they give you such a big bonus, then why'd you leave? And she just like, there's a beat. And then she goes, so what was his name? And she's just like, blah, blah, blah. She like kind of fills her in a little bit. She's like, I just know that look. I've seen it in the mirror a couple of times. It's such a great line though. And it's such a great way to show that she's like, no. I'm pointing out your foibles, but I'm not pointing out that you are the only flawed person there is. I'm saying like, I get it. Like,
we're all sorry. Sacks of shit here.
We make mistakes. We all make mistakes, especially when you're a woman in the city. But, and this is interesting. So then, when she asked Sophie, well, what was his name? She's like, her name. And this is 1978, and Sophie has been outed herself to this friend as a lesbian, and of course, followed by the classic line of, "Don't worry, you're not my type." Which is like the kind of thing, because Adrienne Barbeau, I will say, Adrienne Barbeau, for being like a legendary, beauty in show business, she's always been a bit rugged.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, it was very like believable without even being, I don't know, leering or odd or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But I sincerely believe that the choice to make her a lesbian was to create one of our first red herrings.
Okay.
Because we've already gotten the suggestion that somebody's watching her.
Yeah.
From across the way, because there's two big apartment buildings across from each other, Arkham Apartments.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like one of the reasons to have her be a lesbian was to make you kind of wonder in the back of your mind, like, is she going to is she like obsessed with this girl?
Yeah.
Like, is she becoming obsessed? Cause now she's on the game board, just like all the men characters are. And, but they get more complicated, and we'll talk about that right after this. So now Lee is back at home after her first sort of day on the job.
/ interview.
Yeah. And she's sitting at she has a little desk, or well, she's in her apartment, and the phone rings, which is at her little desk in her bedroom. And she answers it. Now, this is a film where whenever the phone rings, the music goes,
yeah, it gets real tense.
It's about, something's not right. So, the music, by the way, was composed by Harry Suckman. I don't know how you say it exactly. And he had done a ton of films. An incredible
I was going to say
amount.
it just like had that classic vibe of the time.
Well, he was nominated for Best Score for The Singing Nun. So he won Best Musical Song Score at the Academy Awards for Song Without End. So he has an Academy Award.
Wow.
But he did lots of movies, mostly smaller movies, but a few big ones too. Daniel Boone TV series, mostly television, but a few movies because Academy Awards are for movies, not TV. And he did get nominated for Best Score for the High Chaparral, which was, I guess, a TV show because it was an Emmy.
Okay.
Oh, and he got nominated for the Best Score for Salem's Lot, the TV miniseries.
That's
which
cool.
Is awesome because that is a really good miniseries or limited series or whatever they call them. But Someone's Watching Me was one of his last films.
Really?
He died in 1984.
Wow, that's not that much long after.
Well, he died at 72. So he was
okay.
His first score, as far as I could tell, was 1954.
Okay.
So he'd had quite a career. But yeah, just doing lots of TV and the occasional TV movie or even feature film in the early days of his career. So, and one of the few John Carpenter films that he did where he was not directly involved in creating the score.
Oh, yeah. It was very interesting because the score was very not John Carpenter at all.
In television in that era, the director didn't really spend any time in post. They were gone. That was not really their involvement.
Okay.
So Carpenter claimed that he refused. Well, he didn't refuse. He chose not to shoot coverage so that the movie would be the way he wanted. And since nobody told him he couldn't do that, he just kept doing it. So he said all of the best stuff he got is in the movie because he didn't shoot anything else.
Well, there you go.
That's a sneaky way you can do it. And if you can get away with it, it works. So her phone's ringing.
Yep.
And she picks it up.
Yeah. She picks it up, and the voice on the other end, she kind of almost like doesn't recognize it at first, and then starts asking questions, and then realizes, oh, this is Steve, the guy that had been hitting on her at work.
Yeah.
And she had very politely but firmly let Steve down at work, kind of like not interested and not gonna be interested. So like, let's not make this weird sort of thing. So she, again, rather politely but firmly says, thanks, but no thanks, and hangs up. And then a few minutes later, it rings again. And, the music gets a little tense. She picks up, and I think it's the second time when she answers, and she says, at the sound of the tone, the time will be exactly 8:39 p.m. And then like dings on her wine glass or whatever.
Yeah, which I found very funny.
Yeah, again, it really gives you a lot of sense of her personality and her sense of humor. And so she does that and hangs up, and then it rings a third time, and she picks it up, and she's about to be really like upset because she's trying to be nice, but Steve's not taking the hint. But the voice on the other end is different now. And it's calling and asking her some really weird questions about her home. And then it just, the call just instantly hangs up. And it doesn't scare her, but it definitely like gives her pause. And she's like, that's weird. But as the audience, we see the camera pan down from her and focus underneath the desk, and we realize there's a tiny microphone under her desk that has been planted there.
Well, and we glossed over when she first moves in. It was a pretty funny scene, but it doesn't really play into a lot of the horror. She was, being explained how the apartment is top of the line, and they have a computer system that controls the temperature and does all these things. And she doesn't have a phone, though. There's no phone line set up. So when she comes home at some point, I think it was right after the day at work, her door is unlocked. And at first she's really freaked out until she sees the phone set up, and she's like, oh.
And they were coming in to set up the
phone.
They
came in and then left the door. So she called and said, like, the phone's working, but they left my door open. And he's just like, oh, sorry about that.
But he does say, like, I don't think that's right because I closed the door myself.
Well, and then while she's talking, a man in all black runs past her. It's like the first big scare of the film. So we've been established that somebody is not only watching her, but has been in her home. And now it's just being, reinforced by the fact that there is indeed a listening device under her desk, which is where she talks on the phone and which would allow you to know a lot about what she's doing and what she's up to. So now we know that she's really being watched. She's being surveilled by some unknown, unsavory individual. And because it's a TV movie, we have a few red herrings. Could it be Sophie, the kindly coworker? Could it be the guy hitting on her from work? Could it be her ex from New York that she never wants to talk about? Mm-hmm. Could it be the goofy but seemingly harmless guy who introduced her to the apartment and told her, all the silly stuff about it? Or could it be the doorman who's really friggin' nice?
Oh.
You just don't know.
I think the doorman's too nice, if you ask me.
That was kind of what I was going for. But we're going to take a break, and we'll talk a little bit more about the next haunting moments of Someone's Watching Me.
So, Lee wants to show off her apartment to Sophie because they're getting along really well at work. She has her over, and while they're kind of like walking back to Lee's apartment, Sophie reveals that she's gotten a job offer out of state, and she's like really considering it. And Lee, they haven't known each other very long, but she's already saying like, you can't leave me alone. Like, I need you there. You are holding this whole job together.
She's the first friend she's made in Los Angeles.
Yeah. So like, please don't leave me. But when they get to Lee's apartment complex, she gets home and checks the mail, and she's gotten this odd kind of letter, opens it up, and it says that she's been entered for a chance to win a 6-month all expenses trip to somewhere in Europe.
From Excursions Unlimited.
Yeah. And it's really weird because it says that she's going to get clues and she has to guess.
She's going to get gifts.
She's going to get gifts.
She'll receive gifts in the mail, and they will hint at where the vacation is to. And if she can guess correctly where they're referencing, she wins the 6-month paid vacation.
Yeah. And Sophie and Lee are pretty much immediately like, this smells like a scam. Like, it does not seem like it's on the up and up at all. So they disregard it pretty immediately. But that's just the start of it, because later that night, Lee is alone. She's like in her cozy nightgown. She's smoking a cigarette, sitting on her couch, getting nice and cozy when the lights start to like fade in and out. And it's not like flickering like you would expect if, say, there was going to be like a power outage.
Mm-hmm.
It is literally like fading in and out, almost like the lights are on a dimming switch. And it's very unsettling to her. So she's not feeling too cozy at home anymore. So she like goes out to a bar. And this is another moment where we really get to learn more about Lee as a character, because she goes out to a bar, she's reading a magazine, and some guy comes up and offers to buy her a drink, and she just tells him like just to scram. But then she's looking across the bar and she sees a different guy, and she walks up to him and offers to she introduces herself and then starts to walk away, and then walks back. She's like, actually, I want to buy you a drink. And I thought it was pretty fun that she like flipped the script, and she was also the one, like she was the pursuer.
Well,
kind of.
It turned into they were going to play a game for it.
Oh, that's
flip
right.
For it, for who buys the drinks. And it's a really great gag, because she says, we'll flip for it. And she's like, lucky for you, I lost my coin that's only tails. So she flips, slaps it down on her the back of her hand and says, heads or tails? And he says, heads. And she holds up her hand without showing him and says, tails, and puts it and pulls it away. And he goes, may I see that coin? And she goes, no. Which I thought was just perfect. I really was a very solid scene. Also, I appreciate in movies when they depict female characters like this, because it's so easy to paint any character very one-dimensional. You could have her just be aggressive toward men or dismissive toward men. But the fact is, like, she's just a regular person. Like, she doesn't like some people. She doesn't want every dude that, comes around sniffing at her to hang out. But like, she saw this dude and was like, you might be cute. You might be cool. We'll see.
Yeah.
Cause they end up having a great time. They end up walking together to his car. He mentions he's a philosophy teacher, and she mentions a few fake things she does for a living, including being a proctologist, but then admits she's a television director. And he mentions that to come to the true conclusions as a philosopher is to be direct. And then he says, like, well, will you come home with me tonight? And she's like, not tonight. And he's like, okay. And he says, like, can I see you again? She's like, yes. Then when she gets to her car, I just love this line. She sits down in her car and then goes, not bad, LA.
Yeah, I love that line.
So, but then realizes she didn't give him her number. She wants to catch up with him, but he's already gone. Then we get this like stalker shot of her in her car. And I love it because this freaky looking guy just pops up at the car, and I forget exactly what he says, but he says something like, he says,
hell of a night,
right? But he doesn't say it like making conversation. It's like he's had a horrible night, hell of a night. And it scares us, the audience. And then he just walks away because and this is also great visual storytelling. He didn't shrug like this.
Yeah, he wasn't slurring and everything.
No. But he has a little bit of an adventure managing the curb. He has to take a little more time to transition from street to curb. And that tells you he's drunk. When you notice how he's like looking down there, he's like, okay, yep. 1 foot up, there we go. All right. And that tells you, that he's just a drunk guy. He's just a drunk guy who scared some woman because I guess he had a bad night for whatever reason. So, I love that whole sequence, how it plays on your expectation.
Oh yeah.
And keeping the stalker far away while making you wonder if they're actually nearby, you know, if it's her new love interest now or the aforementioned red herrings. It keeps you guessing.
Yeah.
And that's one of the big important elements of, you know, the kind of classic television thriller, because you got to remember when you're doing a TV thriller, now it was easier back then because there were only like 4 channels, but your goal is to get people to stick around during the commercials because they want to see what happens next with this story.
Yeah.
Super important. So the intrigue is very thick in this. It's also very old fashioned in a way I like. It feels much more like it's in some ways like it's like a 60s era or early 70s era movie, just from a standpoint of pacing and reveals and stuff like that. And I've always felt like that's how John Carpenter does things. I always felt like Halloween was kind of old fashioned in its presentation style and stuff, even though it was inventing new stuff. It was still doing them in a very traditional way overall.
Yeah, I agree.
So, but her love life isn't the only thing we have to be concerned with, because I mean, the shit is always getting ready to hit the fan, and we'll talk about that right after this.
So the next day, Lee is at home at her apartment, and she has she's got a package waiting for her. So she brings it in and sets it down. Really doesn't think much of it. Gets some wine, and she, you know, kind of takes off her jacket, and then she gets a phone call. And we're starting to realize that anytime she gets a phone call, it's not going to be good. But at least this time, like, she calls and they don't say anything. They just hang up. She looks at the package and finally decides to open it. She opens it, and it's a great big box with all sorts of pieces in it, and realizes it's a telescope. So she starts putting it together. But as she pulls all of the pieces of the telescope out, she also pulls out a little, like, card, and it says, "This is from Excursions Unlimited." She goes to bed, and she gets another phone call, and a really creepy voice is asking her if her air conditioning is working, which was really weird.
Yeah.
And she even like kind of thinks like air conditioning.
But the voice is too creepy to even vaguely possibly be a person who works at the place taking, you know, like a maintenance person. He doesn't sound like he just, you know, has a cold or something. He's like, "Is your air conditioning working?" You know, like, there's no way it's not an obscene phone call.
Exactly. So as soon as she's trying to start to answer, she like gets her composure and she's like, "Air conditioning," and he just hangs up.
Yeah.
And so again, the phone calls are really, they're not breaking her butt. There are cracks appearing. And
they're
that's
not breaking her butt, but there are cracks.
But
there's only one crack, hopefully.
Well, yeah.
Butt crack. All right.
Butt crack.
But no, sorry. Continue.
Multiple butt cracks. So she gets in the shower, and this is the scene you were talking about with the doorman. She gets in the shower. She's, you know, trying to relax, to clear her mind, and the doorbell rings. So she puts on her robe, goes and answers, and the doorman brings her a wrapped gift and says it was waiting for her before he even started his shift. So it was like just down there waiting. So he doesn't even know who even dropped it off. So she opens the gift again, you know, the second gift, and this time it's like a bikini.
Right.
With another card that says Excursions Unlimited. And she gets another phone call, and the really creepy voice says, "This is gift number 2. I hope it fits," and just hangs up. So things are really starting to escalate. But things aren't just escalating with her stalker. Things are escalating with Paul, the guy from the bar, too.
Right.
Because she has him over for dinner. A nice, like, little homemade dinner. But she's pretty distant the whole time. And he even, like, kind of asks her what's going on. And she tries to brush it off. She says, you know, she's just working all the time and that's why she's tired. But then finally she just says she's got to explain it all. So she shows him the letter and confesses that she likes him, but she wants to take things slow because not only is she still like trying to get established in LA, all of this stuff going on with her stalker is really kind of got her preoccupied. And he's fine with that, though. He's like, I understand. And, you know, just try to be safe with whatever these weird letters are. And he leaves. And almost as soon as he's out the door, she gets another phone call. And she hears the voice and then they hang up and she's getting really upset now. She gets another visit from Paul and he says that, you know, he's done some research with, I think he says with the county and says that there's no business registered as Excursions Unlimited and that she should really call the police. Like that now is the time when you should start asking for help because you're getting calls almost nonstop and the gifts also are not stopping and they're kind of at this point escalating. So she decides to have dinner with Sophie because who couldn't use some time with your friend to decompress. And she admits to Sophie that the letters and the gifts are like really starting to get to her now. And Sophie tries to help think of ways that she can help, but really they can't think of anything. So they part ways. Sophie leaves, but as Lee is waiting for the check, the server comes over and brings her a bottle of wine, and Lee's like, I didn't order this. And the server says, oh, it's from the guy at the bar, but you know, when she turns and looks, there's no one at the bar. When Lee gets home, she gets a phone call and the creepy voice says, I'm sorry you didn't like the wine I got you. So she's starting to feel like there is no escape. Like she can't get away from the stalker when she's at home. They're watching her there, but she also can't get away while she's out because somehow they can follow her out during her, you know, just day-to-day life. And that's the thing that I like about this movie is it is really claustrophobic. A good portion of it takes place in the apartment complex. But even when she does, like, you know, go out to a bar or go to a restaurant with her friends, she still feels trapped.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's kind of the thing, the who can you trust, who's watching, where are they? That is the mystery and intrigue, and we'll talk more about it right after this.
So Paul had suggested that Lee call the police. And I really like Paul as a character and his relationship with Lee because he's never the knight in shining armor, but he is definitely there to support her. But she's definitely the one who has to like have agency and take care of herself. And so now is finally the point where she wants to take Paul's advice.
Right.
And she finally calls the police. And it must have been quite a while because she's at work on the phone with the police. And she's explaining that She needs them to intervene because she's already changed her number. She's done everything that she knows how to do to shake this person. And the calls, she's getting calls constantly, not only at home, but at work now. And they basically tell her, like, unfortunately, there's really not much we can do. Like, you kind of have to wait until something happens. So she's not too happy about that.
No.
She gets another package in the mail. And this time it's like one of those big old manila envelopes. She opens it up and it's nude pictures of a man. And they're not like super raunchy, but they're definitely like naked pictures of a guy. Yeah. So. They're definitely like naked pictures of a guy, but that's not even the worst part, because when she gets up to her apartment door, there's a note on the door that says that they were there to talk to her about her trip to Europe. They got there and had been waiting around, and it was 11:15 now, and they had to leave, but they'll be back at 11:30 to see if they can catch her. But they'll be in the garage if she wants to meet up. And this is kind of like the moment where Lee really decides to step up. She goes inside, she grabs a knife, and she just hightails it down to the garage.
Yeah, trying to catch whoever left that note before they leave.
Yeah.
And this is definitely one of the highlights as far as the suspense. I mean, by the third act, things get pretty intense anyway. But she's chasing after this guy. Well, chasing after a guy, although she hasn't seen him per se. And she ends up dropping the kitchen knife she has when she enters the laundry room of the basement. And at that point, when she drops the knife, it goes through a grate, a floor drain, and she pulls the grate up to get the knife and suddenly hears somebody coming and ends up hiding underneath the grate. And this is like really solid. He seems like this creepy, mysterious guy. And she's dead silent because she doesn't want him to know she's there. And he drops his cigarette on her, and she has to like stay quiet as it like lands on her, which I thought was like a great
I gasped.
I mean, usually in horror movies, it's like a mouse, or a rat like crawls on somebody or something, and that's or a spider.
Yeah,
makes them scream. But I thought that was very realistic, especially. So he leaves, and she crawls out of the drain and kind of, runs back to her apartment. And now we start to get the suggestion that this has got to be the culprit.
Mm-hmm.
And he's, a somewhat recognizable guy. I forget the actor's name. He played Uncle Leo on Seinfeld years later. So he was a well-known character actor. But yeah, so that's like our biggest near incursion so far.
Yeah. Yeah. So she's obviously deeply shaken, and Paul comes over to comfort her, and she, they've been taking things slow. She kind of uses this as an excuse to invite him to spend the night, because she's like, I'm freaked out, because he's even invited her over to stay the night at his place. And she's like, I'm just not comfortable with all these phone calls I'm getting. I'm just not comfortable. But now she's saying, I don't want to leave my house, but I also don't want to be here alone. Will you stay the night with me? With all the things that implies. So they go back to her room, and, they're getting busy, and someone's watching them from across the street, watching them through a telescope. And we can also hear the recording from over the bug. So the next morning, when Paul is leaving for work, he says that he'll like he knows somebody with the LAPD, so he's going to kind of use his connections to get her a meeting with someone.
Yeah, because enough is enough. We got to get this figured out. Like, this is clearly not harmless, and she's definitely not imagining it, hopefully. So, which is another element, especially in this era of thriller, is the nobody else witnesses it but you. Therefore, you start to, or nobody believes you.
Yeah.
They start to think you're imagining things or have gone crazy or something.
Yeah, you're gaslamping yourself.
Ah, yes. Yeah. Nothing worse than being gaslamped. But we'll jump in more to what the police have to say and how they're going to try to solve this, and our natural, every thriller has it, false ending right after this.
So one of my favorite moments was as Paul's leaving for work that morning. She's feeling a little bit better, just because, she spent the night with Paul, and she gets up to kind of start her day. She puts on a robe and the phone rings, of course. Picks it up, and the voice says that he likes her better without the robe. She take it off. And that's the moment where it hits her. And she looks out the window and she realizes that her stalker has to be in the building across to her. Has to be. So Paul picks her up. They're discussing her stalker. And he kind of mentions, like, it's really sad, but that, this is why people are so insulated nowadays. Like, you just don't know who people are, and you just don't know, what's going on. And she can't take that. She doesn't like that. And she says that she refuses to let anyone take over her life. And I love the dichotomy of those two moments of the gripping fear of realizing how close the threat is, and then immediately her deciding, like, but almost kind of like that saying, like, your enemy, or you're not trapped in the room with your enemies are trapped in the room with you. That's kind of like the attitude that she has now, is like, I'm not going to let this guy take over my life. This is my life. I'm not going to let him have it. So Paul and Sophie are definitely there to help Lee. They're at her apartment. He's on the phone with his connections to the LAPD, and Sophie is using the telescope that quote unquote Excursions Unlimited got Lee to spy on the building across the street. While they're all talking about it and kind of spying on everyone, the really sweet doorman comes, and he's got another letter that was waiting on his desk for him. Lee opens it. It's from Excursions Unlimited. And it says that, unfortunately, she didn't win the trip. And now the only course is removal. And the music kind of like,
yeah,
it was pretty great. She goes with Paul to the police, and they explain everything, and explain that things are escalating, and she keeps getting letters and gifts and phone calls, and that's not enough. They say they really can't do anything. They still can't do anything.
Well, he hasn't technically committed a crime because there's no legitimate threat. I mean, it's all in the subtext.
Yeah. And the friend, even the police officer friend, even said, like, we can't arrest someone for like a whole bunch of wrong call, like wrong number calls. And, I kind of get it. But one thought I had is that, like, things are a little different now, or at least I feel that they are. Because I feel like with harassment laws the way they are, I feel like if someone kept calling you.
It's not about harassment laws. It's about the ability to track phone calls.
That does make sense.
I mean, you can with ease prove that somebody's called you 100 and sometimes. I mean,
that makes
you don't
so
even
much
need to
sense.
go to the phone company. You could just pull up your phone and show them the missed calls.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's enough to get a restraining order and stuff.
No, that makes sense. No, but it was just something that I thought.
But also, I mean, she also doesn't know who this man is.
Yeah. No,
he's just she thinks she knows because she saw a guy, with a telescope who she's pretty sure is the guy that she saw when she was in the rain grate. So, yeah. I mean, that's, that is somewhat light in evidence, but
it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
And when it's the only lead you've got, sometimes a stab in the dark is better than nothing at all.
Well, I mean, nice choice of words.
Aha.
So yeah, they're trying to figure out what to do. But don't they eventually they spot him on their own telescope watching?
Yes.
And they end up calling the police, getting the police involved, and they bust this guy, find out that he is a retiree who lives in the building. They found a key to her building, but he claims it's because the washing machines are better in her building's basement than his building.
So he just wants to use the washing machine.
And which, I mean, I think if you're listening to this, we're going to spoil it anyway, but like, there's always a false ending, and this is the false ending. This guy is too obvious, but that would explain why she ran into him down there, because they were literally at the laundry room.
Yeah.
And supposedly that's why he enters her building to do his laundry. But he's adamant, what are you talking about? Like, what are you doing? And they point out that he's taken some photographs from his balcony. He has been peeping. It's not enough to really put him away, but it is a crime.
Yes.
So the officer explains to her that while they couldn't get anything necessarily official on him, they were able to do some non-official things to kind of clean things up, basically suggesting that they intimidated this man. The man lost his part-time job as an electrician and moved back to his native Iowa. And the officer who facilitated that is in contact with the police department where that guy lives, and they are keeping tabs on him for the next 6 months. So this guy is, he's being punished, but not in a legitimate way.
Yeah.
So, which, yay, right? Everything's good. It's all better. Yay. And then Lee receives another letter and notices a different man spying on her from a balcony with a telescope. And that's when she realizes they got the wrong guy. And this is one of my favorite turns in classic thrillers, is the false ending and the realization that the danger is still there. I do wonder, because I never got to watch any of these when they in their native airings. I just never could. I do wonder if people would be like, oh, and then they'd look at the clock and be like, wait, it's only 9:30. Shit, she's still in danger. They had to. But we'll take a quick break, and then things are going to get more intense right after this.
Being the good friend that she is, Sophie comes and is there for Lee to kind of, be her companion. And she starts venting about everything and explains what she saw. So they get the bright idea to keep spying on that building, see if they can, kind of pinpoint where that other person is. Maybe they can figure out, some clues. And they realize that it's dark over there and no one's in that unit. So Lee gets the bright idea to grab a couple walkie-talkies. She leaves one with Sophie, who can stay there and kind of be the lookout. And Lee will go over there to that other apartment and investigate. Sophie does not like this plan, but she goes along with it. And so that she won't be totally helpless, Lee does grab another kitchen knife.
I mean, it's the weapon available.
So she goes across the street and manages to get into the other apartment and almost immediately finds a big recording device. She finds the big telescope, and she finds a printing press, and she finds header paper that says Excursions Unlimited. So like literally everything is right there. But then when she's looking out the window, she realizes that things are not okay across the street. She sees the door open and tries to walkie Sophie to let her know that she's in danger, but someone tackles Sophie and wrestles her to the ground, and Lee, dashes outside trying to save Sophie, but in the meantime accidentally leaving her walkie-talkie and some other evidence behind. She runs across the street, and Sophie's totally gone.
Yeah, just nowhere to be found.
Absolutely vanished into thin air. So when the police finally come to investigate, though, they go across the street, and all the evidence that Lee had found is gone. And on top of that, the plane ticket that Sophie had booked for herself, because, she's planning to move out of state, it's been used.
Well, the ticket was booked like immediately after she disappeared to Fort Worth.
Which is, to Lee, that makes absolutely no sense. But to them, they're like, well,
and the police found evidence that the ticket was used. And they've gotten in touch with her new job there, and they said that they'll be in touch when she shows up for work.
Yeah.
So, yeah, now we're getting into everybody starting to think she's crazy territory. They also tell Lee that the apartment she believes her stalker resides in is temporarily empty because the person who lives there is working abroad and has been gone for 2 months, which is actually valuable information that they don't realize.
Yeah.
So at this point, Lee is really feeling doomed and hopeless, and she falls over. And it's a really cool scene because it's kind of a little silly. I mean, that she falls into her desk and flips it over on top of herself, but it's the perfect way for her to find the wireless microphone, which didn't exist back then. That kind of technology would have been insanely expensive. Finds the wireless microphone and realizes she's being full on surveilled.
Yeah. So now that she knows that she's not just being watched, she was being listened to. And this explains how they knew such, deep, intimate details, but that makes it all the more disturbing because they were literally listening in on everything. She really is not okay with that. So she gets into the elevator and starts freaking out. She hears starts hearing an alarm go off. And when she gets out of, and tries to pull the fire alarm, but when she gets out, the guy outside, says that she stopped the elevator herself. She's freaking out. She gets in her car and her walkie-talkie is in the seat beside her, and the creepy voice starts contacting her over the walkie-talkie and then starts playing the sounds of Sophie's death. She goes to Paul, and he believes her. The police don't, but he definitely believes her. And as they're brainstorming, he starts thinking about it, and he comes to the conclusion that they should go to the city and start asking about who inspects apartment buildings, because that's the kind of person who would have access to her apartment building.
Well, yeah, they talked to like the fire marshals and everything, just trying to figure out who has access to these buildings. And this worker basically tells them that in the office for inspections, that the apartment inspector, there's an apartment inspector named Herbert Stiles, and that he oversees and has access to numerous buildings throughout the city and has for a really long time. And that those people are very, very intensely vetted, and but that they have like access to everything. But then he even, tries to calm their nerves by saying, well, understand that people are contacted before an inspector arrives anywhere. I mean, there's always notice given, but this makes them think maybe they finally have their guy, because this would be somebody with all the access possible, because this isn't just access to apartment buildings. This is access to literally everything, to power systems, to climate control, plumbing, elevators. In fact, she even asks that. She says, like, would they be able to access the elevators? And he was like, of course, they would need to be able to make sure that they're functioning properly. So now it seems like we have a smoking gun, and we'll find out what she discovers when she decides to do a little detective work all on her own, with some breaking and entering as a garnish right after this. Lee takes a taxi cab to Herbert Stiles' home, breaks in, and starts looking around, and immediately she finds tape recording devices, telescope. She finds microphones and other devices, and a catalog full of the type of microphones, including specifically the non-existent in real life wireless microphone that she had found in her home. So this seems pretty much solidly. I think she also found the printing press for the Excursions Unlimited.
Yeah.
So this has got to be the guy. So she calls Paul and tells him, and he's like, get the hell out of there. Like, what if he shows up?
Yeah.
Because she's broken into his home. So she heads back to her apartment and finds the lights are out. And Paul had found something out right before this scene that was really important, which is he had figured out that there were, I forget the exact number, but that there were, I think it was 4 suicides in the buildings in this guy's jurisdiction in the last couple of years, all young women, all living alone.
And didn't they coincide with his vacation dates?
I don't know if they coincided.
I don't. Okay.
I don't. Okay. Wait, do you not know how to say it? Coincide.
I tried to say correlated and coincided at the same time.
I think he did. I think you're right. I think he did say that it was while he was on vacation, they died every time.
Yeah.
So that raises the stakes a lot, because now we're into like definite murder territory, because even though it would definitely seem that Sophie was murdered, we don't know. We have no idea. In fact, they don't pull that in this, but like in a lot of those Lifetime movies, people that you think are dead, like the last scene is like them in the hospital, and it turns out they didn't die. Similar things were done with a lot of Goosebumps and stuff, young adult stories and stuff. But Lee gets back to her apartment to find the lights are out, like completely. They won't turn on.
Yeah.
And to me, the most chilling moment of the whole film, she finds a typed out note next to her typewriter, and it's a suicide note.
Yeah.
Basically saying like, something like, I have no blame to give. I simply cannot go on, or something. And that's when she realizes her fate. And this is the moment that really like made my blood run cold when I watched it the first time. And I only saw this for the first time a couple years ago. I mean,
really?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't really very available.
Well.
But at that moment, out of the dark, a man jumps out in a taxi, and they have a really solid struggle where she's fighting him off. Right before he had jumped out, she realized she was trapped, so she shattered the glass to the balcony and started screaming, "Help, murder," which how would anybody hear it from that high up? But she's trying. She's desperate. So now he's attacking her. They're wrestling around. She's getting the upper hand occasionally, but this guy's clearly stronger than her. And it's Styles, the guy that they were explaining. And it becomes clear he is going to throw her over the balcony.
Yeah.
Thereby instituting yet another suicide of a young woman living alone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so good. This tense scene where as he's trying to push her over the balcony, she's trying to grab this shard of glass off of the window off the window. And she keeps reaching for it and can't quite get it. But then when she finally grabs it, she sticks it in his back.
Mm-hmm.
And he is like, it like hurts him. And as he's like trying to grab for it, he goes right over the balcony. And she gives a pretty sweet one-liner that because I think she'd said it earlier in the movie, but my memory's escaping me. But she just says, "Sorry," or she just says, "Guess you got too close."
Yeah,
and it's a pretty slick way to end it. That she sends him toppling to his death because she ain't no slouch. And I remember you seemed surprised that as she's standing there after the guy fell to the death and the wind's just blowing on her because she's standing on the balcony, the credits just start rolling and that's it. That's it. She stopped the bad guy.
Yeah, there was nothing else. And I know you and I have discussed it personally, and I'm pretty certain that we've mentioned it on the show, but where you can tell what a movie is really about based on, the final scene and the final shot. And I think it's great that the final scene, the final shot is just her fighting this guy. And then the final shot is just her looking determined and resolute. And not cocky, but just she did it. She stood her ground and she did not let him take her life.
Well, and she came damn close to dying.
And she came pretty damn close to dying.
And it was very unusual for that era for them to not have any resolution afterward. That wasn't very common. Usually there would at least be a little scene where the police would kind of show up and explain thanks to you, women are safe now and blah, blah, blah. They skipped that. They went straight for once the threat was over, the movie was over, which I don't hate.
No.
And I think it's a strong ending for a pretty strong movie. I think if you like kind of trudging thrillers, this one is a really solid one.
Yeah. Well, and the burn is slow, but what I like is, just like with, Halloween and a lot of Carpenter films, a lot of the terror is in the atmosphere and is in just how he builds it up. And, getting into Lee's mind where, every time the phone rings and, she's on edge. I really liked that. And I really liked, you and I were discussing it when we started the movie. I liked the setting. I liked the setting of the apartment complex. I think that apartment-centered horror is a underappreciated setting, like you had said. But I think that it's a really good setting for horror.
I mean, do you know of any other ones?
Wouldn't technically the Candyman, at least the first one? I mean,
kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't take place wholly at the apartment, but apartment is a major element. Poltergeist 2 is a really good apartment horror movie.
There's that one from, was it 2018, 2019, One Bedroom?
That was a pretty good one. And that one was literally about an apartment that's cursed.
Yeah.
Because to me, apartment horror is literally just if the setting is all about that sharing walls and sharing hallways, that stuff always, gets to me a little bit. And as apartment living became more common and more cool and hip, especially in the 70s and 80s, you saw a lot more of that stuff. Although there were other ones. I mean, Rear Window they're basically living in apartments and he witnesses a murder.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a decent amount of apartment movies because, I mean, living so close to your neighbors like that, it just introduces all kinds of possibilities for terror. So we'll be talking about our final thoughts on Someone's Watching Me and what our next film will be here on Cutting Deep right after this. So what did you find scariest about this, about Someone's Watching Me?
I think that it's because aside from her friends, no authority believed Lee.
Well, they took her a lot less serious after the false ending because I think the attitude was, since they caught the guy and she was still freaking out, that was just her, looping out, I guess, like it being a little nuts. That's the way I took it. Cause I mean, that's literally, what he writes on her bathroom mirror right before. No one believes you. And it melts away on the glass, which is a great symbolism of the fact that, like, she'll never be able to prove that message because it's gone already.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's, the idea of nobody believing you, no authority figures believing you, etc., is a classic element of horror.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you'd have more, you'd be more have more of a connection with just like what it's like being a woman moving into a new place and stuff.
Oh, well, obviously that too.
That's so obvious you didn't even think of it.
It's so obvious I didn't even think of it. No, I mean, yeah, there's definitely that element to it because I've lived on my own for, quite a while, and being a single woman alone in an apartment comes with its own unique challenges. I luckily never had a stalker though, but I could definitely, sure. I could definitely relate with the feeling of kind of being trapped.
Of being trapped?
Oh yeah.
How so? Sounds just very intense.
No, just when that one neighbor next door to me was like going insane. And
okay.
Chopping on his walls and shit. Like that was unsettling.
Yeah. It's hard for me to think of those as apartments.
Yeah.
Because they're all exterior, like, kind of like hotels and motels.
That's fair.
Like when I was growing up, when we lived in apartments, they were, 5-6 story buildings where you share a hallway.
Yeah, I get that.
I'm not saying that that's any less, upsetting. I'm just saying, like, I kind of forget that that's technically also apartments.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could see that. I mean, well, and that's the thing. I hate sharing walls. I hate the idea that I don't know who is literally on the other side of me, because there's very little separating you.
Yeah.
In reality, because it's not the walls of an apartment building are not necessarily any more complex than the walls between your bedroom and your living room or whatever. They're just some plaster. If you're lucky, some insulation. That's it, so you're really nearby. That's always irked me a little bit. When I lived in an apartment in Jersey, it was not a big one. It was a house that had been turned into, I think, 5 units.
Okay. And
my upstairs neighbors were just weird. They were just like, I don't know if they wrestled or something, because there was always like slamming sounds and laughing. I'm serious. But when they moved out, somebody moved in upstairs, and I am not kidding. If I watched television after 9 o'clock, they'd call the police. It was really bad.
Oh God.
They would call the police. And one time I had a friend over, and she and I were literally, it was 7 or 8 o'clock on a Sunday. We were eating Chinese food and watching a movie, and the police showed up at my front door and said, "We got a noise complaint about this apartment." And I was like, "What?" I mean, I'm 21. My TV was a 27-inch tube television. You can't even turn it up that loud.
Yeah.
So I was just like, what? And they were like, could we take a look real quick? And I was like, and they just kind of stepped in. I mean, I was completely taken aback, and they literally walked in and they see one other person, some Chinese food on the fucking floor, cause we're sitting on the floor watching TV. They walk through my hallway, see there's nobody else in the place. And then their demeanor completely changed. They were like, everything seems fine here. Just, just try to keep it down after 10. They seemed like they knew that this was bizarre. And I was like, okay, cause like it's 7:30, it's not even anywhere near 10. And they were like, we're sorry to bother you. Have a good night. And they leave. And I was like, what the hell? And I talked to my landlord, and at first he was like, I heard about that. I'm sorry to, whatever. And I was like, if you need to, put them in touch with me if the noise is bothering them so much. And remember, they're upstairs neighbors. You barely hear downstairs neighbors.
Yeah.
You hear everything from upstairs neighbors. And so I had told him, I was like, if it's really that bad, they can put them in touch with me directly so they can like tell me if I'm bothering them. And he was like, I really appreciate, your willingness to work with that. And then he never did, because he realized they were insane. Yeah, because then one night I was laying down to go to sleep at like 11:30 at night, and I just heard like screaming at the top of the lungs, like, I hate you, you son of a bitch. Like, I hope you die. And they were fighting, whoever lived up there. And I was like, oh, they're just crazy. Luckily, they were only there for about 4 months before they finally got thrown out.
Oh, God.
I don't know if they got thrown out or had to move or couldn't pay the rent. I have no idea, but they were gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was interesting. And then the other one was I had one room in my apartment that had that the corner was weird. So I kind of shared one wall with one neighbor and one wall with another, and they hated each other. And I could sit and listen to them fight.
Oh God, no.
And it was scary, because my closest neighbor, the one that I park my car next to every day, he was like, I will kill you. And I believed him, because he was pretty tough looking dude. So I completely forgot that I had those experiences, because they didn't last that long. For the most part, it was just nothing. Yeah. I mean, like, it was just living in an apartment building thing.
Yeah, yeah.
The upstairs neighbors might be noisy sometimes. That was my biggest struggle.
Yeah.
Other than that brief period where they were calling the police. It's still so surreal. The police show up and literally they're expecting a party or something, or at least like a gathering of people maybe drinking, getting a little noisy, yeah. And it's just two people with like fucking boxes of Chinese food.
Fucking lo mein.
Yeah, and the look on their faces too, they were like, this can't be right. Like, this doesn't make any sense. So anyway, that's Someone's Watching Me. I do really recommend, if you love your slow burn thrillers, give it a watch. And if you're a diehard Halloween fan.
Yeah.
Because it really has a lot to it that you see in Halloween, although it's not as masterful and blah, blah, blah as Halloween. We all know it's a masterpiece. It's got a lot going for it. And you can really see where Carpenter was heading. And it was one of his 2 forays into television movies, because the next year after Halloween was wrapped, he directed a little movie called Elvis from 1979 that was a 3-hour event movie on ABC. Huh. And it starred a little young boy named Kurt Russell as Elvis Aaron Presley. And that's how their lifelong collaboration began. Was when John Carpenter directed Elvis, the TV. Another one that was like impossible to find for forever, and I think it got put on Blu-ray. But anyway, so that is Someone's Watching Me. Before we get out of here, I do want to remind you guys, we love to hear from you. Send us an email at weeklyspooky@gmail.com, and we'd be happy to, whether it's thoughts about movies we talked about, recommendations, etc. We'd love to chat with you. So what are we going to be watching next for the show?
Next, we're going to be watching Creep.
So we're doing Creep 1 and then we're following it up with the sequel, or are we?
I wanted us to just do the first one.
You just want to do the first one? Okay. Yeah. Okay. I can live with that. Creep is a really great flick. So I'm trying to find, I think it might still be on Netflix. But I'm checking right now. It is a found footage film that is very hard to describe without spoiling anything, but it is disturbing, awkward, and a delight.
Yeah.
You can stream it right now on Netflix. It's available there, and it is also available on Amazon Prime with your subscription. It's never been easier to watch Creep, so give it a watch, and we'll be talking about it in the not too distant future.
Yeah.
So with all that being said, thank you guys for joining us for Cutting Deep into Horror. We do appreciate it. If you love what we do here at Weekly Spooky and Cutting Deep into Horror and want to support us in a very direct way, you can head to weeklyspooky.com/join for as little as $1 a month. You get 2 bonus episodes every month and a massive amount of my gratitude. I really do appreciate the support. And there are over 85 spookies there already, so now's a really good time to join in before the spooky season starts, because this is the time period when it's all die-hard horror fanatics. So with that all being said, everybody be safe, be well, and close your drapes at night, because really, just trust me on that one. We'll see you next time.